Welcome everyone. My name is Rosa Villegas, and today's workshop is about optional practical training and is presented by the International Student Center. Again, my name is Rosa Villegas and I'm one of the educational advisors. We have two other ones that you'll be working with, but today I'm presenting, and just to let you know, this meeting is being recorded and we will share with you the recorded video as well as the presentation probably by tomorrow or early next week. So we hope that you find this information helpful, especially if you're interested in applying for OPT. So today's agenda, it's kind of long. I may be going through some of the points kind of fast. We're gonna be talking about what's OPT, the types of employment of OPT, OPT eligibility requirements, OPT rules and regulations, OPT timeline, when is the best time and how to apply for OPT. And although it's a benefit, you also have responsibilities. So we're gonna cover what some of the responsibilities are while you're on OPT. We're also gonna be talking about travel during OPT, as well as what happens after OPT ends. And we're gonna provide you with some resources, and hopefully at the end of the presentation, we'll have time for questions. Feel free to type in your questions in the chat, and Ms. Sandra will read them out to me. Sandra, do you wanna introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Sandra and I'm the senior clerk at the International Student Center, and we're glad you're here today with us.
Thank you, Sandra. So let's get started. What is OPT? OPT stands for Optional Practical Training. It's temporary employment. So OPT, it's one of the benefits that you guys as students with the F1 visa have. When you apply for OPT, the training that you do must be related to your major. So for example, if you're a computer science major, when you apply for OPT, the types of employment that you get have to be related to computer science. OPT is available during and after your studies, and you'll see later on what I mean by that. When is the best time to apply for OPT? During or after you graduate from PCC. OPT is recommended by the advisor in the International Student Center. So when you are ready to apply, you're gonna be working with one of us. However, we don't approve the employment under OPT. It will have to be approved and authorized by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. This is the agency that works together with other department agencies related to F1 status and visa, and they're the ones that process the employment applications for F1 students. OPT is authorized for 1 year per degree level, and I will also explain what that means in future slides. So keep on writing down your questions or send them in the chat, and as we go along or at the end, we can answer them for you. The types of OPT that students under F1 status are eligible are pre-completion, post-completion, STEM extension, and CAP-GAP extension. The reason I highlighted post-completion OPT is because this presentation will be focusing mostly on post-completion OPT, which is what the majority of the students at PCC do. We do have occasionally students who want to apply for pre-completion OPT, so we will help you with the process, but mostly it's usually post-completion. STEM extension and CAP-GAP extension, those are not for students at the associate level. once you transfer to the university to work and earn on your bachelor degree, you may be eligible for those too. So when you are there at the university level, you can talk to the advisor in the international office about those two options. So we talked a little bit about pre and post completion OPT. They're similar in the way that the training for both of them has to be related in your field of study. If you're getting your nursing major degree at PCC, your certificate and your associate degree, you have to be working in the nursing field. Business, again, business is a broader major. You may have more options. You can find employment under business as long as you're able to connect it to your major. You do not need to have a job offer to apply. So you can go ahead and apply, submit your application, and later on look for employment. So you don't need to have that job secure in order to apply. As I mentioned earlier, when you're applying for OPT, you work with the advisors in the international office to help you collect the paperwork and recommend you for OPT, but the final approval, you will receive it from USCIS. Also, if you have completed OPT at a higher degree level, you will not be eligible to apply at the lower level degree. So this little graph shows you, for example, currently you're at PCC, we offer the associate degree level. If you get your degree, you're eligible to apply for 1 year of OPT. After your OPT, you can transfer to earn your bachelor degree, and then you will be eligible to apply again for OPT. Compared to this other graphic, if you have already completed a bachelor degree and you completed your OPT, but then for some reason you apply to PCC at a lower level, you're getting your associate degree, you are welcome to apply and earn your degree at the PCC at the associate level, but you will not be eligible to apply for OPT again. So as you can see, the first graph shows the sequence, and you always need to be moving up in order to be eligible to apply for OPT. If you're moving down at degree level, or you completed OPT at the same level, for example, students completed an associate degree at Citrus College in business, and then you apply to PCC to the nursing program, you are welcome to apply and complete your degree in nursing. Unfortunately, you will not be able to apply for OPT again because it's the same degree level. When you're approved for OPT, your employment may include paid employment, which is what we all want because we want you to make extra money. You can have multiple employers. You can work for multiple companies. You can work in state, out of state. You can move out of state if you find a company out of the state. You can be self-employed, meaning you create your business company for the time that you're on OPT. I will strongly recommend that you talk to an accountant or somebody, a professional that will help you getting your proper business licenses and also guide you through the process, as well as what will you do after your OPT ends. You can find employment through an agency, or you can even do volunteer work while you're in OPT. So we did talk about the similarities between pre and post completion OPT. Now we can talk about the differences. Pre-completion OPT, you can apply 90 days before reaching 1 academic year, meaning if you started at PCC during the spring semester and fall is your second semester and you're interested in applying for OPT pre-completion, you can go ahead and do it now because you're going to be finished your 1 year in the end of the semester. For pre-completion, this is when you can work during your time at PCC, meaning you're working part-time and enroll in classes full-time. So during fall and spring, if you apply for pre-completion OPT, you cannot work full-time, but you can do full-time during summer and winter. There are no employment restrictions as far as unemployment dates, but the time that you do during pre-completion OPT will count against the time allowed after you graduate. For example, let's say you apply for pre-completion OPT and you did 1 year part-time, that equals to 6 months of full-time. So at the end of your degree, when you earn your associate degree and you want to do post-completion OPT, you will only have 6 months left. You will not be entitled to a whole year again. For post-completion OPT, you can apply 90 days before your graduation day. Your graduation day is the last day of the semester. If you graduate in this fall, it will be December 13th. You can only work after your graduation date. So you have to file right now, but you cannot start working until December 14th, for example, the day after. When you're doing post-completion OPT, the idea is that you're doing full-time employment, 20 hours or more. Right now, during COVID-19, the government has made an exception and you can actually work less than 20 hours if you are not able to find full-time employment. But this is only an exception right now during COVID. Normally, if it was regular circumstances, in order to maintain your F1 status during OPT, you will have to be working full-time. This is a huge difference compared to pre-completion OPT. During your time approved for post-completion OPT, you cannot accumulate more than 90 days of unemployment. So you have about 3 months from the day that you are approved to find employment and still maintain your status. Again, as I mentioned earlier, if you did pre-completion OPT, it's gonna take away from the time of post-completion OPT. So based on your own needs and your goals, you will need to decide if you wanna do pre-completion, work while you're studying, if you're able to manage work and studies, or if you would rather wait and work full-time after you graduate. So at least you can see and compare the differences. OPT eligibility requirements. So I mentioned earlier, in order to be eligible to apply for OPT, you must have been in F1 status for at least 1 academic year. At PCC, 1 academic year means 2 semesters, spring and fall. If you started with us in spring, if you started with us in fall, you're not gonna be able to apply for OPT until you're in the spring semester. And the 1 year of academic studies is at the higher education level. So if you attended a high school or a language school, that time does not count towards the 1 year. It counts at the higher level. You must have maintained your valid F1 status and continue to maintain your status. If you apply for CPT, curricular practical training, and you completed 12 months of full-time CPT, you're not eligible for OPT. And as I mentioned earlier and showed in the graph, if you completed OPT at the higher level, you will not be eligible to apply for OPT at the lower level. And if you're applying for post-completion OPT, you must apply and earn an associate degree at PCC. If you're applying for post-completion OPT at the bachelor level, then you have to be earning your bachelor degree. With the benefit of employment, there are also some rules and regulations that F1 students will have to follow. First and foremost, the employment that you find has to be directly related to your major. And I'm repeating this quite a lot because this is one of the most critical points of OPT. The idea is that employment, it's a benefit. Therefore, if you're earning a degree in the US, the government is allowing you to practice what you earn, what you learn in school, in your classes with your teachers. So that's why this requirement is important. Also, when you're applying for OPT or during OPT, you're still an F1 student. So if your application is taking a little longer to process, you can remain in the US until you get a response from USCIS. However, you cannot start employment until you actually receive approval. If you start employment and work without authorization, that's considered illegal employment. So that's not good. We don't want you to do that. So please, please do not begin any type of employment until you have your authorization card. Also, I mentioned early, post-completion OPT, you will need to be working 20 hours or more. Again, during COVID, you can do less and still maintain your status. Is not gonna go against you. A few more rules. You can have multiple jobs. You can have unpaid, paid jobs, volunteer work. It doesn't matter as long as all the jobs are related to your major. You cannot exceed 90 days of unemployment. And if you're applying for post-completion OPT, you need to create what's called an SCBP portal account. This is similar to your Lancer Point account where you see your academic records. The portal account is gonna allow you to report your employment and keep track of the days of unemployment and employment. Something very, very important is that if for some reason, after you apply for OPT, you decide that you don't want to pursue the OPT and you decide that you want to go home, you need to let us know because we need to process your I-20 accordingly so that you don't jeopardize future returns to the US. So always, always report any changes to our office. So when do you apply? So today I'm focusing on the fall semester because some of you may be graduating this fall and are considering or thinking about applying for OPT. Our semester will end December 13th. So you can apply 90 days before, as you can see in the chart. The window to apply for OPT, if you are graduating this fall, it's already open because we say you can apply 90 days before. This is your graduation date. And you can still apply 90 days after your graduation, but definitely something to keep in mind is February 11th. That's the final day that you can request, and your application for OPT should be in the USCIS office. If you apply after this date, most likely your application will be denied and you will be out of status. So if you're seriously considering applying for OPT, right now is the perfect time. Once you submit your application, you have your 12 months of OPT, or you'll have whatever time is granted to you depending on when you apply. So when you apply, it's very important. And then at the end of your OPT, you'll have 60 days to decide what are you gonna do if you wanna maintain your status and stay in the US, or if you are returning to your country. So the reason that you guys are here is because you wanna learn how to apply for OPT. So step one is to meet with an academic counselor. You're gonna file for graduation and you're gonna request the counselor to give you the OPT recommendation form. And these forms are on our website. So if you haven't visited our website, make sure you visit that website and look for the OPT packet. After you meet with the counselor and the counselor says, yes, you're earning your degree, you're ready to apply for OPT, then you're gonna collect all the required documents for your application. Throughout the process, if you have questions, you're welcome to apply, book an appointment with one of us to help you, but you'll see, I will show you the checklist that is, that lists all the documents needed for the application. Once you have all your documents together and you completed the application forms, you're gonna submit them to our office. Once we review and we say, yes, you do meet the requirements for OPT, we're gonna issue what is called the I-20 with the OPT recommendation form. That's actually what you need in order to mail your application to USCIS. So the final step will be to mail your OPT packet to USCIS. Make sure it's a complete packet. That way you avoid denials or delays in your application. Once the USCIS receives your application, it normally takes 3 to 5 months to process. And what I noticed is right now during COVID-19, unfortunately, again, it's taking a little longer. So that's why it's very, very important that if you graduate in this semester, you seriously consider making an appointment with us and filing your application as soon as possible. And once you send your application, remember, don't start working, you can look for employment, but don't work yet. You can let the company know that you are waiting for your approval. If you are working on campus on the last day of the semester, you have to stop working until you have approval for OPT. So if you have a student worker job position at the school this semester, please stop working on December 13th. That's your last eligible day to work if you're applying for OPT. Other reminders, so again, I mentioned and I show that the earliest you can apply is 90 days. The window to apply for OPT, if you graduate in this fall, it's already open. USCIS must receive your application within the 60-day grace period. I wouldn't recommend that you wait that long, because if you apply late, that 1 year of OPT gets shorter depending on when they approve your application. So it may still be approved, but you may not be able to have the entire 1 year of OPT. Something very important, and I emphasize this because one of our students did get denied because they didn't file on time. So when you request OPT and one of us advisors creates the I-20 and issues it to you, it has an issue date. You must mail your application within 30 days of that issue date. For example, if I issue the OPT I-20 today, you only have 30 days to mail your application. If for some reason you delay and you didn't mail it in, and it's the 25th day, just to be on the safe side, I would say contact us, contact the advisor that issued the I-20, say, hey, for some reason I didn't mail my OPT packet and it's already gonna be almost 30 days. Can you give me a new I-20? We can definitely do it if it's before you mail it in. If you already mail it in, there's nothing we can do. We just have to wait and see what USCIS says. They may reject your application and send it back, or they may take it and deny it. So please, please keep this in mind. Also, again, I said earlier, USCIS is taking an average of 3 to 5 months to process employment applications. So please plan accordingly. This is the checklist that I mentioned. If you're interested in applying for OPT, make sure you start collecting your documents. This form, it's on the website, and all of the forms that are government issue, I recommend that you go directly to their website. Do not Google and search for the form because you don't want to come up with the wrong version of the form, because that also may be grounds for denial. So always go directly to the website. And this form is not really required, but I recommend it because it's just a one-page form, and it only asks for your name and contact information, phone number and email. And that's because when you mail your application, as soon as USCIS receives it, they're gonna send you an email or a text saying we have your application. So that way it gives you peace of mind that they actually receive your application. This it's something that we're still waiting. The application fee was $410. It was gonna go up starting tomorrow to $550. However, some good news is that some agencies sue the government because of the fee increase. So now this fee is on hold. I checked USCIS website today and they haven't updated the website yet, but it looks like for now, there's a stop on the increase. So if you wanna file, you still will be able to pay only the $410. So the $550 price increase is on hold for now. So when you're ready to apply, make sure we talk about it to see if there's any updated information that we can share with you. You're gonna need 2 recent passport photos. This form is the actual employment application. Again, please go directly to that website to download the application. Do not Google it, do not research, do not use one that your friend used 2 years ago because it changes and there are different versions. So it's important that you find the form directly from the website. That way, you know it's the most current version that they're using. You're gonna need a copy of your most recent I-94. So if you traveled last summer and you came back to the US right before the fall semester started, make sure you go to the website and print out your most recent I-94. You're gonna need a copy of the I-20 with the OPT recommendation, and also copies of all your I-20s issued to you in the past. So if you attended different workshops or you attended orientations, we always tell you do not throw away your I-20s. And this is the reason why, because whenever you're applying for employment or you submitted an application to USCIS, they will typically ask for copies of all your I-20s. So please, please save your I-20s, don't throw them away. Even though in the future you transfer to the university, you transfer to UCLA and UCLA give you a new I-20, put away PCC's I-20 because you may need it in the future. And then your UCLA I-20 will be the most current one that you use. You're gonna need a copy of your passport. Make sure your passport is valid. Copy of the admission stamp. This is the stamp that you receive at the airport when you enter the US. So it'll be on one of the pages of your passport. Copy of your F1 visa. If you have multiple visas on your passport, make sure you copy the F1. Some students may have a visitor visa from the past because they used to come to the US with a visitor visa, but make sure you copy the F1. And if you ever apply for OPT before and you have an employment authorization document, make sure you include the copy of it. This may or may not apply to all students. And then we're gonna need to see the OPT recommendation form signed by you and the counselor. To pay for your application, you can use a check or money order. make sure you check it's payable to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and spell it out. Don't use USDHS because they want to make sure it's spelled out. Make sure the check is from a U.S. bank account and it's pre-printed. Do not use temporary checks. So make sure that if you have checks, it's pre-printed, it's not a new account where it doesn't have your name or address. Or if you're having someone give you the check, make sure their information is here. As you can see, it's spelled out. And also in the memo or the area below, you can put application fee for I-765, or you can put your name, however you want to do it. Make sure you or the person issuing the check signs it. We don't want, again, delays with your application. You can also pay with credit card. We have had students who have problems with credit cards, so we don't really recommend it, but if you do, make sure that you submit your credit card information on this form. And the form, you can find it in the USCIS website. Make sure that your credit card allows you to charge this amount. Some credit cards have a limit, and if the fee is rejected, your application may be denied. So if you happen to pay with a credit card, make sure you send the form, and I will recommend to go the extra step and contact your credit card company and say, hey, I'm authorizing USCIS to do a charge of $410 in case you see that coming through. That way the charge will be approved right away. But it's your choice. We don't really recommend it, but if you want to do it, plus also if you're submitting your credit card information and you're sending your application by mail, that's going to be in the mail. And of course, we all know we never send cash by mail. So check, money order, or if you want to use your credit card. I mentioned many documents that you need to complete and attach to your application. So if you're not familiar with the I-94, when you go to the website, this is how it looks like. Make sure you print it, because this information, you're gonna need it to complete the employment form. You're gonna need your admission number and the date that you enter. So this is the I-94. I mentioned the admission stamp. This is how it looks on your passport, and it will be the latest one that it was put in your passport. Some airports or some officers, my understanding is that they're not stamping the passport anymore. So if you don't have the latest one, that's okay. You don't have to worry too much about it. Copy of your passport. Make sure your passport is valid for at least 6 months into the future. So if your passport is about to expire, it's always a good idea to contact your counselor right away to know how and when can you apply for a new one. The passport, you can renew it in the, inside the US with the counselor or from your country. Make sure, like I say, include a copy of your F1 visa. If your visa is expired, it's okay. You're eligible to stay in the US with the expired visa, as long as your passport is valid and your I-20 is valid. So you don't have to worry too much about the visa, as long as it's the F1 visa copy that you include in your OPT application. I mentioned the OPT I-20, and I highlighted some important things that you have to keep in mind. Your major is very important. If you are applying for OPT and you take out your I-20 and you notice that you have a math major and you're like, oh, I changed that a long time ago, you probably never reported to our office. So that will be the first step that you need to do. Request a new I-20 with the current major that you're gonna graduate. So maybe you change it to business, but your I-20 still has math. We need to update that right away before you apply. Otherwise, if you're applying for OPT with this I-20, you're letting the government know that you're getting a degree in math and that your employment is going to be in math, when in reality, you're getting a business degree. So this is very important. Also important are the signatures. Make sure the advisor who issues the I-20 signs the I-20. So in this case, I issued this I-20, I need to sign it. The student needs to sign it, so make sure you sign it before you make the copy. And I mentioned the issue date of the I-20. So this I-20 was created June 19. The student only has 30 days to mail the application to USCIS. So always look at the date. And again, if it's getting too close to the date and you haven't mailed it in, make sure you contact our office or the advisor that created the I-20 for you. This is the second page where we actually recommend the employment. This student applied for post-completion OPT. Post-completion OPT, we always recommend full-time. The status is requested because this is when I create the I-20. So the student is barely gonna submit the application. And the dates requested are the dates that you are requesting. It may or may not be the dates that you get approved, but those days when you're meeting with the advisor, we'll talk about what's best. And you can refer to the chart on the previous slide to get an idea of what you want to do. You should be very familiar with your I-20. So this is the CVIS ID number. It's always on the top left-hand corner. It starts with the N. This number is also required on the employment application. So these are all the information that is very important. Tips on completing the I-765. And again, this is the employment application. Today, I'm going to show you a sample form, but I always recommend that you follow the instructions online carefully. I'm repeating myself, but make sure you download the form directly from the website. If questions do not apply to you, you will need to type or print NA, non-applicable. Name, make sure you're using your legal name. Maybe your nickname now is Joe, but your passport name is the legal name that you need to use on your application. Your address is very important. USCIS mail your documents to the address listed on the application. So make sure that you are able to receive mail there, and they don't use PO boxes. So make sure you have a physical address. Because we're referring to post-completion OPT, this is the code that we're gonna use, and I'll show you where it's needed in the application. Something very, very important is make sure that you print your form and sign it. Don't type your name on the form and send it like that. It has to be an actual signature. Here's my little disclaimer. This is just a sample. Make sure when you're completing this form, this is the form I-765. This is the actual employment application. I answer and highlighted some of the usual responses if you're applying for OPT. But again, this is your application. This is gonna be your information. This is just a sample. I mentioned that the form changes every now and then, so always look at the website and look at the most current form required. On page 2, this is where you're gonna enter your information. Again, I highlighted the areas that most students typically complete. My recommendation is if you do not have a social security number, is to apply for the number within this application. If you say no, you have to wait until you get approval for OPT and then you have to go apply on your own. So that will be another extra couple weeks. So if you apply within this application, you're just gonna have to fill in additional information of your parents. But usually you get the social security number right away within a couple of days of getting the employment card. So you get the employment card and your social, or you get the social and then the employment card. So they usually come within a week. Remember, I show you your I-94, your passport, because all of this information is required here. So you can see you need your I-20 number, your status, your entry date, your passport expiration date. So all of this is on the documents that I showed you earlier. Remember, we're talking about post-completion OPT. This is the code that you're gonna use. And nothing else applies to you because these are when you're at a higher level. So just make sure you're using the correct code. If you're interested, in applying for pre-completion OPT, it will be a different code and we can give it to you when you're applying. It's C3A, that's the difference, but it's different. This is where I say you need to sign your signature. So you can type everything, save the PDF, print it, and then sign it. But don't forget to sign it before you mail it in. Because if you mail it in without a signature, it may be denied right away. We were lucky and one student got the whole packet back. So they gave her the opportunity to sign it and resubmit, but you don't want to risk it because you don't know what the outcome will be. So make sure you do a complete application, make sure you sign it. Again, typically students fill out the information, so none of this may apply, and just make sure you put NA or type NA. Typically speaking, students at the associate level may not need to complete the last 2 pages. But again, you have to read it carefully and answer each and every question. If it doesn't apply, just make sure you type NA. If it applies or you need to report that you have previously applied for OPT or CPT, then that will be on the last page. So make sure if you need help, we will help you, but you will reference the page number and the section. And again, typically speaking, this is the last page, page 7, is if you have previously completed CPT and OPT. So make sure you ask if you're not sure. After you complete your application, you're ready to mail it in. Make sure you wait for the International Student Center to issue your I-20. I do recommend that you make copies of all the documents that you're mailing in just in case and for your records, or you can save electronic or hard copies. And typically speaking, these are the addresses that you're gonna use because most students use the address in California. If for some reason you're not using your own address and you're using somebody that is not within California, make sure you go to the website to see if it's a different state, make sure if it's the same address or if it's a different address. So after you apply, you're gonna get a notice saying we have your application. It usually comes about a month later. And that notice is gonna have a case number. With that case number, you can check online the status of your application. That way you know approximately when you're gonna get your card. If the application is approved, and it will show in there and it will show your card has been mailed. That way you can keep an eye on the mail and make sure it doesn't get lost. So once it's approved, you receive your authorization card. This is how the actual employment work card looks like. This is what the companies are gonna ask to make sure that you're legally okay to work. These are the dates that we talked about it. Make sure that when you receive your card, you look at all of your information, make sure it's correct. And again, even though this student was approved for employment starting August 3rd, if she or he received that card in July, that means they applied early, everything went smooth, they received their card. Even though they got it in July, they cannot start working until August 3rd. Same thing. The company wants them to continue working past August 2nd of next year. They cannot do it unless they got a different type of employment, but not under this OPT card. So these dates are very important and you must follow them. Some responsibilities that you have is the health insurance. This is not required, but we strongly recommend it, especially now. Some companies will give you benefits and they will give you health insurance. Some may give it to you right away. Some may wait a month or 3 months. So it's up to you. Again, it's not required, but if you do want to purchase it and continue your health insurance, make sure you get it within 30 days of your end date. So for students graduating in fall, I believe the health coverage ends January 1st. So you only have the month of January to purchase the insurance, and you can either enroll online or complete the form and mail it to the insurance company. Whether we like it or not, we have to pay taxes. So whenever you're working and earning money, the government wants us to pay taxes, and it's for everybody who earns money. Unfortunately, we're not accountants. We cannot advise you on taxes, but make sure that when you're finding a professional, that you find someone who is familiar with international student taxes, because the forms are different, and it's not that you can do the TurboTax, for example. That's not for international students. So make sure you consult a professional, or visit the website and they have some of the forms in there. I mentioned you have to report the employment. So that way you report employment is by creating the portal. We talk about the 90 days of unemployment, and remember the unemployment starts on the start date of your employment card. Not when you apply, not during any grace period. It's from that day on your card. And all types of employment need to be on the field of study. When you're approved for OPT, you're going to get an email. This is the website where you can find more information about the portal. But this email address, keep it in mind, because this is where you get your email with the link and instructions on how to create the portal. It does not come from PCC, and it does not come from USCIS. So the email address may not look like it's a legitimate one, but it is. So make sure you open that email. And once you start reporting your employment, please do not delete any information that you enter. If you started with a company and you no longer work for the company because you didn't like it or for whatever reason, make sure you put an end date and you can add a new company. Never delete any employment information that is listed there, because that's your history. That's how we keep track, or the government keep track of your unemployment dates. And you can have multiple companies. You can change companies throughout the year. If you don't like one, you can move on to a second one. If you want to work as much as you can and one company gives you full-time and a second company gives you part-time hours, you can add both of them. You can have multiple companies listed at the same time. Travel during OPT. So remember I said when you're in OPT, you're still on F1 status. You haven't changed your status. So if you have a need to travel outside the US, you still need to request a travel signature from our office. Travel signatures during OPT are only valid for 6 months at a time. As a student, the travel signature is valid for a year, but as an OPT student, it's only for 6 months. Make sure you have your employment card authorization. And we recommend that you travel with a letter from the company where you're working. That way, when you re-enter in the US, the officer knows that you're coming back as an OPT student. If you have submitted your application and you want to travel overseas, but you haven't been approved, we do not recommend it because you need your EAD card to re-enter the US. So it's very risky because the EAD card will only be sent to the US address. It will not be sent overseas. And if you don't have anybody that can mail it to you, you're risking not being able to re-enter. So we don't recommend it. But if you have to, then it's your choice. And what happens after you finish your OPT? So remember, you're gonna follow the dates on your card. You do have the 60-day grace period. And within that 60 days, you may stay in the US, but you cannot continue working, or you cannot travel outside the US and come back during the grace period. You can travel within the US. So let's say you finish your OPT here in California and you wanna go visit family in New York. As long as it's within the US, you can still travel within the 60 days, just not outside because you will not be able to re-enter under the F1 status unless you get a different status or a different visa. You have those 60 days to transfer out to another US school. So make sure you let us know, make sure you submit your proper paperwork so we can process the transfer and release the record to the new school within the 60-day grace period. If you're not gonna continue in the US, you have approximately 2 months to prepare to leave. So if you have your apartment, make sure you notify your landlord. If you have a car and you're gonna sell it, whatever you may need to prepare to leave. Some students may be eligible to change status. So if you apply for a change of status, you have to make sure you do it in a timely manner and make sure you work either with a lawyer or you do it on your own. It's up to you. Just make sure you, again, notify us what your plans are at the end of OPT. We have some resources available. The reason I recommended the Freeman Career Center is because if you need help finding jobs related to your major, you can talk to the advisors there. They have workshops about interviewing techniques, how to create a resume. So it's always a good idea to be in touch with the Freeman Career Center, especially if you're gonna be wanting to work in the US. We also have the academic counselors that are gonna help you with your OPT recommendation form. They're gonna help you with filing for your graduation or any other questions that you have related to academics. And you can book the appointment online. Obviously, right now, everything is virtual, so make sure you plan accordingly. Educational advisors, that will be myself. And now we have it, depending on your last name, you can book your appointment with your advisor. We can all help you, but you know, if your last name is A through J, feel free to book with me and I will help you through the process for OPT or any questions that you have related to your F1 status, reduced course load, your I-20, make sure you reach out to us. Some external resources that I thought might be helpful while you're applying for employment. One of our academic counselors shared this link with me, or this website. And this is if you need help finding connections between your major and occupations or type of employment. So make sure, I will recommend check it out, but also work with the Freeman Center. Also USCIS, that's where you're gonna get all your forms that I mentioned. And Study in the States, if you are not familiar with this website, it has the regulations and rules that F1 students need to follow. So it's always a good reference. This concludes my presentation. I will open it up for questions if you have questions, but I sincerely thank you for your time. I know this is a lot of information. Like I said, we're recording the meeting. We're gonna share the link with you, and we're also gonna share the presentation in case you need to reference back to it or need help. But again, the best thing that you can do is stay connected with us. We're not physically on campus, but you can always send us an email, leave us a phone message. We're checking our messages, but make sure you leave us a good phone number to call you back, or visit our website. So again, thank you for your time. If you have questions, I have time to answer your questions.
Rosa, there's no questions in the chat.
Thank you, Sandra.